This meeting of Norwood City Council is hereby called to order. Please rise for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father, who art in heaven, is congregate in this council chambers. We pray for thy divine guidance, that we may do all things well, according to thy holy will. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I ask you all to remain standing, please? I was watching the news last night and saw that Officer Wood from Coleraine Township passed away from his injuries being hit by a truck. So, we always say the first responders run in when other people are running away, and so I just want to have a moment of silence for the good work that Officer Wood did, and on behalf of his family who he leaves behind. Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall. Here. Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Ms. Stevenson.
Present.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Here.
Mr. Sanker.
Here.
Mr. Braden.
Here.
All members are present. We have two requests to amend the agenda. The first is to remove the minutes of December 11th, 2018. They were lost in the computer space somewhere, so we'll remove those. And then there is a request to add under communications the earnings tax department report for 2018. Ms. Stevenson.
Thank you. I move that we amend the agenda as you just indicated.
Seconded by Mr. Bonsall. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Stevenson.
Yes, just as a point of clarity, will there be minutes for the December 11th meeting?
Absolutely.
Can you respond to that?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Gears did something that I do a lot. Instead of save as, he didn't quite save as, and so it was last minute, and so we'll deal with those at the next meeting. Yeah. After completing them all, they didn't get saved quite properly. We've all been there. The motion on the floor is to amend the agenda. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. So we'll move on to minutes of December the 21st and December the 26th. Those were distributed by email prior to this evening. Mr. Clark.
Move to approve the minutes as of read.
Seconded by Mr. Thompson. Is there any discussion? Ms. Stevenson.
I'd like to thank the members of council for excusing me when I was absent for those meetings, so I will be abstaining from approval of them.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? The motion on the floor is to approve the minutes as if read. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Abstain.
I'm so sorry. Abstain, that is correct.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, sir.
By a vote of 6 yeses and 1 abstention, the motion carries. We do have 3 requests to address council, but they are not on agenda items, so we'll deal with those a little bit later on. No reports of standing committee or ordinances resolutions. Under administration reports, Mr. Moore, would you like to do your annual report from the law department under administration reports rather than wait to communications?
Whichever is fine with me. I'm happy to go now or later.
What's your pleasure? I think we should, maybe we can move to have this done under administrative reports instead of communication. Mr. Thompson, you make that
we
motion?
can go ahead and move to have Mr. Moore do the law department report right now.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Braden. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Madam President. There's a lengthy written Law Department report for 2018. It covers a lot of things. I figured probably not everyone wanted to hear the whole letter read. I just want to say a couple of things. The Law Department is an interesting situation. Most attorneys end up specializing in one way or another. And I just did off the top of my head a list of some of the things some of the areas of law, or the questions that come to the Law Department on a regular basis. It's things like home rule and municipal law, just general law governing municipalities in Ohio. There's criminal law and criminal procedure, public records, real estate, zoning, labor relations, contract law, both public sector contracting laws, contracts with vendors, all the kinds of contracts there are. There's taxation issues, HIPAA, municipal liability, civil rights, election law, and then there are the constitutional issues. The First, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, Seventh, and 14th Amendments come up regularly, and none of that has anything to do with Norwood's own laws, the laws that we've passed and our regulations. And the questions come in, and they're very, very detailed ones where, okay, well, if I practice this all the time every day, I might have an answer, but it's going to take some work to figure that out. Or more often than not, particularly when it comes to municipal law, there's not really an answer. The Ohio legislature passes laws, and actually this is incredibly true on a lot of whenever they change the criminal laws, like the DUI, kind of the OVI stuff. They've just recently changed the standards for the rules governing suspensions for people in a first-time OVI, and it's not clear what it means. It's quite simply, there's really nobody knows what the answer to that is. There's a lot of things like that. There's a lot of issues that have never gotten to court and actually had a decision on it on statutes that were originally passed under the general code 80 years ago. So it's a really complicated and confusing kind of practice to have. I will, and I just want to say this. I got a quick paragraph in there at the end that Tim Gary, I just want to give my thanks to Tim Gary, who's a person to take whatever the problem is that comes in. A lot of them are not really legal problems, and will jump in with the best possible spirit to try to figure out what's a way we can resolve this. What's the answer? What's the best position to take on this? What's the best path forward? Now that's a large part of what my office does. Also, the secretary of the Law Department is only a third of his time as secretary for the Law Department. The rest of the time is tech support for the city. And as vast as the field of legal issues is, I don't even know enough to start down the list of tech support issues. Essentially, if it's an electronic device owned by the city, T.A. Brown will fix your problem. And again, a gentleman with just an incredible spirit of, you got a problem? Okay, let me see what I can do. I'll see what I can figure out on this, and I'll find a way to make it work. And if that means I'm going to cannibalize my own personal computers in order to get the assistant law director one that can run the DVDs of body cam and dash cam footage, then that's what I'm going to do. That's the kind of people I have working in my department, and I could not be more grateful for them. That's really all I have to say. There's a lot more detail in the report on some of the things, and you're aware of many of the issues that we've worked on for council over the last year. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions or comments? I would just like to say that your help with the retirees' health care plan has been phenomenal. I talk to you guys regularly about that, and I think it was because of your guidance that things went as well as they did, and I appreciate that. And anytime I've ever had a question of either you or Mr. Gary, it's always been answered with the utmost respect and thoroughness, and I appreciate that, so thank you for your work. Any other comments? Yeah, Mr. Sanker.
Yes, Madam President, I do want to reiterate what you were just saying, that the amount of work that they put in for the recognition, they get a lot of times. We always hear about when we're battling in court, but we never a lot of times hear about the wins when we actually kind of come out on top. So it's kind of a thankless job, but they're wearing many hats in that department, and not just representing one or two people or one or two lawsuits. There's numerous ones going on all the time. So I commend you for the work you guys do and appreciate it. So.
Thank you, Mr. Sanker. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you. Didn't mean to throw your curve by moving that up. It just seemed a little more appropriate.
I usually don't get on at the beginning. It's very exciting.
So that we'll move on to other requests to address council. Many of you are here, you might be here for the first time, and so I want to let you know how this procedure goes. And so according to it's my job to enforce the rules of council, and the rules of council are this when it comes to speaking, that any person desiring to address council shall complete a speaker's request card, which you all did, at least 10 minutes before the meeting. Persons requesting to address council relative to an agenda item are normally permitted to speak prior to consideration of that item. Persons whose comments do not relate to an agenda item shall normally be permitted to address council after consideration of all ordinances and resolution and prior to consideration of other unfinished or new business. Persons addressing council shall be allotted 5 minutes unless council votes to extend or limit the time of any speaker. Persons addressing council shall limit their remarks to the topics specified on the speaker's request card and shall avoid personalities. So we're not going to get into individual personalities. Persons properly requesting to address council at a regular meeting shall be permitted to address council at that meeting unless 3/4 of those members of council present at the meeting vote not to permit the person to, and that's not going to happen. With the consent of any person addressing council, members of council may direct questions to that person following the conclusion of the person's remarks. Council members shall also avoid personalities and shall not engage in debate with persons addressing council. So I just wanted to read those to you for those of you who may be new tonight. So we'll move on in the order in which I received them. The first is Cindy Tincher. If you will come forward and give us your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak.
My name is Cindy Tincher, 5214 Warren Avenue. And I want you all to know that I support the fire department.
Your sign's upside down.
There you go.
I want you all to know that I support our fire department. And I come to you to find out the truth. If the mayor or the service director knew anything about the email that was sent to Mayor Cranley, or if any of you knew anything about the email that was sent to Mayor Cranley. I would like to know. I believe it was an abuse of power. And I think the head of finance, he should step down. And we are asking you, I am asking you as a council to investigate this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Tincher. Next, we have Amy Wolfenbarger. Again, your name and address in 5 minutes.
Amy Wolfenbarger, 5406 Carthage Avenue. I would like to say that I too stand in support of our fire department. I would also like to talk though a little bit about my concern with the bigger picture. To me, when a city has to entertain the mere thought of shutting down some of our most essential services, it's a huge area of concern. It's no secret to me that our city has been struggling for years. I know we can't place blame totally on our city. There has been a lot of state funding that used to cover programs that we've lost, as well as probably some federal funding. I also understand that there must be cuts for our cities to survive, and that we need to struggle through the rough times. What I don't understand is, at least what appears to me, is why aren't we trying to do something about it? We've gone from talk about the trust to talk about shutting down our 911. Now we're on to our fire department. What comes after that? You know, where do we go after here? When I say trying, I mean really trying. You know, a simple Google search that I put in, what do struggling cities do to raise money, just brought up a wealth of information that I quite honestly, I have to say, it blew my mind. The cities that have been creative and put their heads together, they've used resets and assets that are available to them to bring cities back, cities that are comparable to our population. You know, I know Paducah, Kentucky, they've had huge struggles and they've come up with some really creative ideas to move their city forward, not just for what's happening right now, but for long-term effect. That's what I would like to see. The cities that have done this have not only avoided disaster, but they continue to thrive despite past and current economic challenges. What I would like to see from our council and elected officials is to be more innovative and perhaps a little more forward-thinking. Do I agree that Norwood is a good place to do business? Yes. We got a great central location. We have some good history here. But we need to think beyond that. We need to think beyond bringing in businesses and cutting services. And we need to focus on using our distinctive assets to push us further and getting creative as far as economic development is concerned. I think until we can do that, we're going to continue to struggle as a city, and I would like to see long-term changes. I don't want to be worried about the same issues 10 years from now. GM was a huge loss to us. Yes, it was. Grants are a huge loss to us. Yes, they are. But we have got to start working on creative ways to push our city forward. And that's what I'm requesting of council and our elected officials. So thank you for your time, and thank you for allowing me to address council.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfenberger. Next is Pastor Sonny James. Again, address, and you have 5 minutes to address council.
Pastor Sonny James, 1830 Hopkins Avenue, Norwood, Ohio. Before I start, let me first of all send my condolences out to the officer and his family and all of his friends. It's terrible when we lose someone that's dear to us, especially someone who sets out to serve a fine city and a group of fine residents. Next, let me just start off. It's 2019. I come before this council on a regular basis. I wish I could say that I get tired of people looking at me as if I'm the thorn in this city's side. I wish I could stand before you and say that I'm sorry for always nagging at your heels and pointing out the crap that we do on a regular basis, but I'm not. We are now facing more of the same old nonsense over and over and over again. What is it going to take? I'm going to try to stand before you and meet all of the ordinances and regulations. If I fail to meet any of them, you are free to have the law department show up at 1830 Hopkins Avenue in Norwood, Ohio. I am absolutely fed up, and I'm not the only one. Anytime you stand up and say, vote for me, you have to be held by a higher standard. If I want to go out and get drunk, if I want to go out and get drunk, maybe I have a right to get drunk. But what I don't have a right to do is to ask somebody for their vote and to say that I am absolutely the best representation this community has to offer. And then have the audacity, if there's a problem in this community, council members, each and every one of you have an obligation to these residents. If there's a question that comes up, folks, I don't have a problem posing a question. But the first thing we have to do is eliminate all of our secret societies. that allow people to walk around with pompous, arrogant attitudes to think that they can even inquire without coming to all of you. To say, hey, this is my thought. I would like to inquire what is in the best interest of our community. Not to just go on and on about nonsense. Come to the people. Where are the public forums? Where are the town hall meetings? You mean I don't care enough to any of you to ask me what I think? 513-487-8843. That is my personal cell number. I live at 1830 Hopkins Avenue. If you want to see if the residents care, ask them. But if I call on a fireman at 3 in the morning, he's coming, whether I'm drunk or not.
Pastor James, can you please hold it down? We had a promise, remember, you and I. Thank you, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
And the Bible says, give honor to whom honor is due. And I have to admit, Donna Lake has done a fine job of curtailing me.
No, I haven't.
Actually, yes, you have. And I want to honor that. And I want to show reverence.
We came to an understanding, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that.
She says it in such a nice way.
You're saying
but
I'm not
seriously,
nice.
council, yesterday we had residents coming out who were appalled about this. And I have to say, in all honesty, I don't want to put anybody on blast or Front Street, but I was very disappointed that I didn't see council. I'm very disappointed I didn't see leadership. And then I turn around and I see a council member standing there. Not saying what side of the fence he's on, but he's standing there. And that says, I recognize that the fire department is important. Mr. Braden, personally. And again, if I'm violating an ordinance,
You're not supposed to be dealing in personalities.
I am only addressing my residents. And again, I'm not going anywhere, folks. This issue must be addressed, and it will. Election time is coming. This night, you see more people here. The next several council meetings, you will see more here. And soon, each of you are going to go back to the polls and ask for votes. I am demanding an immediate resignation. No questions asked, no sugarcoating. Not only of this individual, but I'm also asking for immediate step down and resignation to any one of you who feel the need to cover up, hide, or sugarcoat. The residents have a right to know. And if you aren't big enough or resident enough to stand up with us, we're not going anywhere. And this is going to be addressed on every turn, on every corner, every door. So I'm asking an individual, and he knows who he is, stand up and say, I'm sorry. Stand up. I'm a Christian pastor. I believe in reconciliation. I believe in forgiveness. I believe nobody is perfect.
Pastor James, can you wrap up your time?
I am not. I'm asking council to extend, if there was any time not afforded by one of the other speakers, to extend that time to me. If it's not granted, I'll accept that. However, each person is granted 5 minutes. I don't think one of the speakers used all of their time. It is very important, council, that when there's something wrong, you at least show up. You at least stand up and say, hey, brother, can't do that anymore. What you did was wrong, and we owe it to our residents to show them how serious we are. One of the biggest problems that I have in Norwood, every time I stand up, people get angry. Do you know why they get angry? Because I'm challenging their family. I'm challenging their friend. I wouldn't care if it were my own mother. If she's done something wrong that's not fair to my residents, I have an obligation to say, Mama, I'm going to eat those greens later tonight because you cook the best. But separate from that, Mom, you did wrong, and we have to at least apologize. We haven't even gotten an I'm sorry.
Thank you, Pastor James.
God bless you. Happy New Year. This isn't going away, and I believe you all know that I'm serious about that. God bless you.
Thank you, Pastor James.
I just have one question for Pastor James.
You have, yes.
Yes.
Mr.
I
Thompson?
just, you indicated that getting drunk was apparently enough to not be allowed to be a serve as elected official. I would just like you to clarify that remark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. First of all, anybody is entitled to their personal life. But we all know heroin is a big thing in Norwood.
I'm sorry, but I didn't mention anything about heroin. I simply asked.
I'm answering your question, Mr. Thompson.
It seems like you're tangenting from my question.
If you ask me a question, sir, you're going to get an answer. But I'm going to answer you. Allow me to do so. If you don't want to ask me, don't ask me.
No, I wanted to ask you. I'm just hoping you stick to
My concern is not over anyone's personal agenda. My concern is when an individual steps up to ask people to vote to say, I believe I am the best choice you have, you are held to a higher standard. Absolutely. There is no option to that. We have children that walk the street. Any child could have walked up and been traumatized thinking they saw a dead body. I'm not talking about making a mistake, sir. I'm saying when you are an elected official, you are held to a higher standard. If you drink, go behind doors and drink all you want, I guess. But when you go out public and the name of Norwood is on a 911 tape, yes, sir, I take great offense to that. This community has gone through an awful lot of negativity. Do you realize how much more embarrassment that kind of stuff could cause us? Have you not heard the 911 tape, perhaps?
Thank you, Pastor James. Thank you for answering the question.
This is Norwood 911. I'm ashamed.
Thank you, Pastor
And
James.
so should you be. Yes, sir.
I'm actually not ashamed. I'm actually happy that our 911 service did what it was supposed to do, which was help somebody with a medical 911 call. I'm a little bit disappointed that you would get up and call for the resignation of someone based on the fact that they were drunk in public. Whether you agree with that kind of behavior or not, to me it's not kind of a disqualifying to serve in public. There was nothing illegal about what was done. This was a medical 911 call that you happen to have privy information about and that you're using against a particular council member, and I don't appreciate that.
Thank you, sir, for I can address back. Thank you, sir, for your words. However, one fact that you still haven't addressed, sir, as an elected official in our town. If you do something and something becomes public, why don't the 183 people that I have personally talked to know that it's a medical situation? Why is it that the residents who are wondering and saying, oh my God, that is terrible. How is it, sir, that they have no clue that this is a medical emergency? You mean to tell me once I hear that my name has gone out, I don't think that I at least owe it to the residents to say, hey, you guys heard something about me. It's wrong. I had a medical situation. My heart would go out for that first and foremost. Okay? But not to just say to the residents at all, I'm sorry it went out that way. That's not what happened, folks. No accountability, no transparency.
So it's the job of the person who received medical attention to apologize to the residents for not being the one to let them know that that person received medical attention.
Residents of Norwood, we are coming up again on an election process, and it's my personal opinion.
I'm asking you to answer the question, not pontificate about
You
it.
James,
need
I'm gonna
to
stop.
be held accountable,
I'm going-
and if something happens, just say, clear it up, so that we can move past it. That's all I'm asking. Just say, hey, I'm on medicine, something was going on, and some of you don't know the truth. This is an open forum for, I thought, the residents. They deserve to know. That's all I'm asking. If it was a medical emergency, tell the world. Because what about the next one that comes up? If we don't address this, the next one may not be a medical emergency. So we can do what we want to do.
Madam President.
Tell the public people, let's hold a public forum and say that to all of Norwood. Say that to everyone who votes for you.
This is a public forum, and I just said it. It is a 911 call that was a medical emergency. I believe it's been said now. I suppose you can come up week after week to demand that someone resign over a 911 call medical emergency, but I'm probably going to call you out on it every time. Thank you.
And I think we're going to end this right now. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for the give and take, but I don't see any, we're not going to get anything resolved, so thank you.
Transparency. That's all I'm
And
asking.
we certainly talked this evening. Thank you. We're going to move on to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam President. I think it was late November, early November, we reported out from the Economic Development and Community Engagement Committee and asked Council to approve a communication to the Norwood Chamber of Commerce. I wanted to share back to Council, to the public as well. That request went through, and so the Norwood Chamber of Commerce has been notified. Members have been notified and invited to participate in this partnership with the Quality of Life Inclusion Action Team and the Economic Development and Community Engagement Committee. And so for businesses that might be listening, business owners, we now have a process in place where sponsorship and donations can be coordinated. They've been notified of the contact people so that we can pretty soon be offering welcome bags to new residents. I'm happy to say at the time we sent the invite, we had already had over 300 new homeowners. And so that was really exciting to be able to share. So it's not like we just came up with an idea that feels good, but there's actually a need. There are people who are coming who maybe haven't been here before. So just wanted to provide that update.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Is there any other unfinished business? I'll give you my update on the retirees. The administrative committee is in place, and we will have our first meeting this Thursday, 1 o'clock here in council chambers. We will be preparing a letter that goes out to all of the current recipients of the former C9 and Millennium Plan that also includes the application for the first year of benefits. So we are moving forward on that, and see where that goes. Exciting that most of the folks that I've conversed with are quite happy with the new plan, and are happy that they don't have to deal with receipts and all that stuff again with our former third-party administrators. So that's just my update on the retirees. Any other unfinished business? Mr. Sanker?
Yes, Madam President, just a reminder. I know leaf pickup has concluded, and a number, even though it was a rough year as far as leaves falling late in the year, people are still raking their leaves out to the curb. And at this time of the year, I don't believe that Public Works is going to be going around collecting, scooping up leaves much more at this time of the year. There's other things that are going on. And so if you do have leaves that you have raked to the curb, if you could bag them or put them in cans, Rumpke will take them. And to get them, because all it does is cause more havoc when the rains come, they wash them down, they clog the catch basins, and people wonder why water pools up there. But if you do have leaves to put out, rake them up, bag them up, can them up, and Rumpke will take them. But I'd recommend not putting them out to the curb at this time of the year. Thanks.
And just for clarification, Rumpke will pick them up, but they'll go in the garbage this time of year. They won't pick them up for composting, but they will pick them up for the garbage. And just to reiterate too, that there are some lawn bags that you can get for free at the health department. The recycling money that we get from the county is used to purchase those waterproof lawn bags, so they are available at the health department. Thank you for that reminder, Mr. Sanker. Any other unfinished business? Any new business? Mrs. Hanrahan?
Thank you, Madam President. I really hate to do say what I have to say here. The letter that was sent to Mayor Cranley, it creates a double-edged sword for everyone here on council. But I believe such action dictates the necessity for a reply. We all know that Norwood is in fiscal emergency. And it is the responsibility of this council to look for and to discuss all options. We've got to take action here to reduce cost, and there is no way around this fact. Looking at all our options, obtaining information, and doing a cost analysis is appropriate action. With that said, I would like to state that I was unaware of anyone initiating talks of a partnership with Mayor Cranley for fire service. This proposal has created a distrust throughout our community, and I want to say that I am really sorry this has happened the way it's happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hannigan. Thank you, Mrs. Hanrahan. Is there any other new business? Mrs. Hanrahan.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to pose a question through the chair to Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, we have talked about some executive sessions and confidentiality. If we want to look at getting, putting this into our council rules, that executive session should be confidential. I want to know how we should go about doing that. Is that just changing council rules? Do we need an agenda? I do believe that information in executive session has gotten out and it's been used for some personal agendas. So I would like us to discuss at some point putting that into the council rules about confidentiality out of executive session, and want to know how we should go about doing that.
Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Madam President. I'll start with the easy part, which is how to change council rules. It has to go to the Law and Ordinance Committee, and the Law and Ordinance Committee then reports it out, and council can adopt amendments to its rules. Adding a provision along those lines, I think it kind of makes sense. There are some there are some things, but it's not all in one place as far as bringing matters out of things that are discussed and how confidential they are. A lot of it is, and an individual council member probably on their own doesn't have the authority to waive when we're meeting with, for example, meeting about pending litigation or about negotiations where you're meeting with counsel. One council member probably cannot waive attorney-client privilege there because anything discussed in that context is subject to attorney-client privilege. There's other things that are just confidential information, and there are ethical rules that apply to council members as far as revealing confidential information. I think it makes sense to put some provision in there in council rules. That I think would go a long way to make it easier, especially for newer council members coming in to understand that that's kind of the situation. But basically the process is it goes into the Law and Ordinance Committee. Law and Ordinance Committee then reports it out and it gets adopted by council if you want to change the rules.
And there's already something in Law and Ordinance Committee about amending minutes. You all asked me to look into that, and the Law Department made that recommendation, and I reported that out from the, and I think that's already in Law and Ordinance Committee to look at those provisions of the council rules as well.
Well, then can I make a motion to add this
Absolutely, you can make a motion.
the Law and Ordinance Committee, please?
So you want to make a motion to place the matter of executive session confidentiality in placing those into the rules of council, and we'll place that in Law and Ordinance Committee?
Exactly. Thank you, Madam
Is there a
President.
second to that? Second by Mr. Braden. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzwell.
No.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes.
Mr. Braden.
Yes.
By a vote of 6-1, the motion carries. And Chairman of Law and Ordinance is Mr.
If I
Sanker.
can, So we'll call a meeting for next Tuesday the 15th. Time to be determined.
Okay, here in council chambers.
Yes, Madam President.
And next Tuesday is the 15th.
Yes, ma'am.
January 15th in council chambers, time to be determined. You can send that out with your public notice. Okay. And will both of those matters be addressed?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. So it's changing the rules of council.
Correct.
Is there any other new business? Okay. We'll move on to communications. The first is a letter from Elena Smith regarding a request for a resolution. Yeah.
Executive summary of document needed, submitted by Elena Smith and residents of Grandview Place. We are looking for immediate action. Grandview Place Road needs repaved ASAP. When you walk out to your car every day and twist your ankle, something needs to be done immediately. Filling the potholes in will not do the job. It needs to be repaved. Special notes or instructions, immediate action needed. Thank you and Happy New Year.
Madam President, if I can make a comment on this.
Yes, Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Madam President. The way I understand this happened is Ms. Smith came into council and got the form that department heads and council used to request that the law department draft an ordinance and submitted it to the law department. So we forwarded it on to you because we figured you didn't want an ordinance until you figured out how to pay for it.
Yeah. Thank you. Is there any other discussion, Mr. Sanker?
I'd recommend that the letter be received and filed.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Hanrahan. Is there any discussion? Mr. Thompson?
I live very near to Grandview, and I can confirm that this is the case with the road. I would be happy if you would amend your motion and go ahead and put it into the Park Streets Infrastructure Committee, and we'll take a look at it there.
Mr. Sanker, will you amend your motion?
No, Madam President. I believe streets are already in your committee correct already?
Yes.
Okay, that's enough.
That's enough, okay.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? So the motion on the floor is to receive and file the letter. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Next is a letter from the Ohio Liquor Control regarding Ohio CVS Stores LLC DBA CVS Pharmacy 6111. Looks like a application for a C1 license. Responses must be postmarked no later than January 10th, which is Thursday. Was everything sent out?
Yes.
We assume that things were sent out to all the appropriate department heads. This was received on 12/10/18. Mr. Bonsall.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we receive and file the letter.
Seconded by Mrs. Hanrahan. Is there any discussion? Ms. Stevenson?
I'd like to ask a question through the chair, through the clerk, to the clerk of council. Can we confirm before taking action that was just moved, whether or not we received any correspondence from the
Yes.
departments? Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Any other discussion? The motion on the floor is to receive and file the letter. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Next is a letter from Tim Maloney regarding the clerk's position.
Dear members of council, during the last special council meeting in December of 2018, you passed ordinance number 34-2018, creating the position of part-time clerk. As you are aware, one of these positions is in the treasurer's office. We respectfully request that our clerk, Lynn Ellis's pay rate be $15 per hour, effective January 1, 2019. This wage rate is the same as her current rate. Thank you for your consideration. Timothy W. Maloney, Treasurer.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, Madam President, question to the Finance Chair. Do we need to approve all clerks that are on a contract converting onto this, do you believe, or?
Mr. Bonsaw, can you help us out?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. So any clerks that are going to be paid more than the minimum rate that we set, so it was $13.50, I think is the rate that we set, we'd have to make we'd have to have a motion to approve that, like it's being requested here. So there's 2 other clerks potentially that are having to be transitioned from contractual to employees, and if that happens, then, and that department head wants them to be paid more than what the minimum that we set, which is $13.50, they would have to come to us as well to do that.
Mr. Sanker?
Madam
And
President.
was this predicated, yeah, Mr. Moore, you want to give us the reason why this
Sure.
was all done to begin with? Thanks.
Thank you, Madam President. The individual we're talking about, the clerk here, was brought on earlier in the year as a contractual employee, as an independent contractor. Letters went out from the auditor's office saying, yeah, that's not going to work. Needs to be an employee based on the position, on the duties, on the supervision. And so we got this letter, I think, we learned of it, it was that week. It was the last week of December. And well, what's something we can do real quick? So I drafted an ordinance as soon as I possibly could to get it on the last meeting. I took the pay rate from the full-time clerk pay rates and did the math, and it worked out at $14 an hour. And so that's where that number comes from. Whether that number should be different for this particular position or for any other position is up to you to decide. It was a contractual, or it was an independent contractor position, so there was no PERS, no health insurance, no tax. I mean, none of that stuff. It was all taken out. Whether that factors in for part-time or not is entirely up to, whether that matters. I'm not so sure it would at part-time because there's not really any benefits to go with that other than the PERS. So I leave that in account, but that's where the number, the $14 an hour came from. I figured the part-time probably shouldn't make more than the full-time as a base salary range. So yes, council can approve a different salary on a majority vote as they have for occasionally in the past. So
And
that's where the number came
Just
from.
to
I wanted
confirm
you
then, as a contractual employee, they are not paid in PRS, there were no taxes taken out, there was no health insurance. And as a part-time employee, those will be,
They will be, Russ.
no insurance, but
No insurance. I
PRS
forget-
coverage and taxes and all that will be taken out.
I forget, I don't think there's vacation or sick time either involved, but I don't remember right off the top. It was a very quick process. We were gearing up for the end of the year, so.
Somebody, maybe we need to look into it. Mr. Sanker?
Yeah, but I guess the bottom line is, in this particular case here, the individual is, we're not giving anybody a raise. It's the current rate that they're at now, except instead of paying them
Benefits.
as a contractual employee, they're going to be paid, on this, as a part-time employee. And I believe part of that was the recommendation from the state auditors as well, if I'm not mistaken.
It was.
Correct. So,
So just to reiterate what I think I'm hearing everybody say, $15 is what this contractual employee made, but with no benefits. As a part-time employee, this clerk, any part-time person would be then eligible for PERS and have taxes taken out and things like that. So any
I
person
don't believe taxes are taken out, are they?
they would be on a part-time person,
Okay.
but not as a contractor.
Correct. Okay, I'm sorry. Misunderstood what you
Correct.
were saying.
So, and anything other than the starting, when somebody starts out, anything other than the starting pay needs to be approved at the different rate. So I don't know if you want to,
Just a majority vote.
yeah, just a majority vote. So I don't know if you want to do that tonight or if you want to look into it, Mrs. Hanrahan.
I think this is what she's been making. I move that we approve this.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Braden. Discussion. Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam President. Was there a timeline associated with this that was communicated? This, I guess, might be a question to the Law Department in terms of getting this approved.
I'm assuming there's a payroll coming up pretty soon that they need to set some sort of
So this
pay
needs to
scale.
be passed so that the person can be paid?
Yes, that's why we passed it at the end of December, so that there would be a rate of pay starting in 2019. And I'm not sure when I think this might be payroll week, I'm not certain. Mr. Bonsall?
Thank you, Madam President. So if we didn't pass this tonight, then she would be paid at the $13.50 or the $14, whatever the minimum is now. However, it can be retroactive. So like if we did pass the motion in 2 weeks, they could back pay her the amount, like the differential pay that she didn't get between the $14 and the $15. So essentially, if we make it effective January 1st, then they can back pay it. The same thing happened with the clerk of council when we hired her. So instead of the $12 an hour, I think she was paid like $13.50 or something. And so they back paid her because there was a delay in getting that motion approved.
That is true. So, I mean, right now, if it's $14 an hour, that's what she's going to get paid. And either it stays that way, or you can approve it. You can approve it tonight, or you can approve it 2 weeks from now or a month from now and make it retroactive to January 1st. It's whatever you all choose to do with it. Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you. I'm in support of paying people who are working. I do have questions about how, in a process change like this, we're communicated to, as a body, making decisions about the pay rate, what goes in the role. So I know this was a move from a contract to an employee, but I'm at a loss for how that translation works. I understand the math Mr. Moore communicated, but I actually don't know how that works given the other clerk positions. And so I'm just trying to figure out how we might go about checking for any disparity, just so that moving forward as we try and put roles where they go, we've got some kind of guideline and not just math to look at. Comment, I think I'll try and reach out to the law department directly to find out where in that vast array of legal experience we might maybe partner and do some more research to figure that out.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Is there any other discussion? So the motion on the floor then is to approve the rate of $15 per hour beginning January 1, 2019. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Next is, we already dealt with the Law Department's annual report, so we will move on to, we do have, well, we got the verbal report. Does someone want to make a motion to receive and file the actual written report? Ms. Stevenson?
Yes, I move that we receive and file the written report from the law department.
Seconded by Mr. Thompson. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Next is a letter from Mayor Williams regarding the December 2018 Mayor's Court Report.
Dear Madam President and members of council, enclosed, please find the report for Norwood Mayor's Court for the month of December 2018. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Thomas F. Williams, Mayor, City of Norwood.
Mr. Bonsall.
Thank you, Madam President. I would move that we receive and file the letter.
Seconded by Mr. Clark. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Next is a letter from the Earnings Tax Department regarding the earnings tax report for 2018.
To Norwood City Council, attached is the year-end report for 2018. There was a large payment in December that will not repeat in 2019, which inflated collections. Even without that large payment, collections exceeded the projection of 1.6% for the year. Should you have any questions, please feel free to contact the Tax Department. Thank you. Chuck Barlow, Tax Commissioner.
Mr. Sanker.
Recommend the report be received and filed.
Seconded by Mr. Breeden. Is there any discussion? Mr. Sanker.
So, Madam President, a few quick notes. If you I looked at this particular report on the page where it says the 2018 actual versus 2018 projected. The projected was $1,366,073.38, and the actual collected this year was $2,461,161.01, for a difference to the good of $1,128,879.55. It's all well and good. A couple things to note on the summary report. If you notice, the 2018 individual collections were actually down from the individuals from 2017 by about $128,000. The net profit for collections for 2018 were actually down from the collections from 2017 by about $300,000+. However, what was up was the withholdings, and that was up a little over $1 million there because of a couple settlement payments. So overall, we were up with our withholdings, but our individuals and net profits were down from a year ago. And back in 2008, 2009, when things were kind of slipping a little bit, those were kind of the trends that we felt back then as well. Our individuals and our net profits collections were down, but our withholdings held pretty steady. So if this trend continues, not saying that, you know, we have to be careful, but I do believe we have to be careful, even though we're to the black this year, and it's very, very good and very positive. It doesn't necessarily mean that next year we're going to, you know, exceed what we brought in this year because of circumstances. So overall, good year, helps a lot and goes a long way as far as our recovery plan, and hopefully it will continue on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanker. And you have lots of experience in this as Chairman of Finance for all those years. Thank you. Is there any other discussion? The motion on the floor is to receive and file the report. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanker?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. May I say that I appreciate the orderly manner in which we had conversation tonight. I appreciate that. Sometimes there are two people here, the same two people, or three people are here watching us at council meeting, and so it's nice to have other folks, and I appreciate the orderly manner in which people came up and spoke tonight. Thank you. We have no absent members. Is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Bunsell.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we adjourn.
Seconded by Ms. Stevenson. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzo?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson? Yes. Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanker?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Braden?
Yes, sir.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. This meeting is hereby adjourned.